So we had a little incident on the show yesterday that was not smooth.
Fox News apologized on Thursday for committing a rare act of journalism. Now, this is stemming from a conversation on their show Outnumbered, where Newt Gingrich appeared to say some crazy stuff, and a couple of the hosts pushed back. I'm going to show you that part of the discussion first, and then I'll get to the apology later. But first, here's the discussion that sparked this entire thing.
Speaker Gingrich, I know you have a final thought for us.
Yeah, look, the number one problem in almost all these cities is George Soros elected left-wing, anti-police, pro-criminal district attorneys who refuse to keep people locked up. Just yesterday, they put somebody back on the street who's wanted for 2 different murders in New York City. You cannot solve this problem, and both Harris and Biden have talked very proudly about what they call progressive district attorneys. Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros's money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
I was going to say you'd get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay. So it's verboten.
All right, we're going to. Okay, we're going to move on.
Wonderfully awkward. Now, I'm going to get to the apology in a minute, but let's go over some of the crap here. George Soros funded anti-police, pro-criminal district attorneys. Yes, when these DAs run to be DAs, they run on being anti-police, pro-criminal, and of course, they're all George Soros funded. Now, the funny thing is, there's actually a tiny bit of truth to one aspect of that. As I was doing a little research on this, I looked into someone that I discussed a bit about during his run, and that's Larry Krasner, DA in Philly. And apparently he did receive a little bit of money from George Soros. But he's also been a bit of a letdown. So this is from the Inquirer in Philadelphia. Larry Krasner is not living up to his reputation as a progressive reformer. So apparently he has not ended cash bail. There are criticisms of him from the left. He is not as progressive as he appeared to be when he was elected. So I guess there's, that tiny bit of truth here in terms of the George Soros aspect. But again, this goes mostly to projection, which I'll get to in a second, but also just the idea of chalking up this narrative of what is going on with these protests, of course, discussing them as riots. I mean, if you watch the other part of that discussion, it was all about the crazy riots in the streets and destroying businesses. Again, these are mostly peaceful protests fighting for criminal justice reform. And the idea of bringing DAs into this conversation, attaching criminals that I guess were released according to Newt Gingrich by these DAs, attaching them to these protests, which of course there is no evidence of at all. He just says that because it helps his case, but complete bullshit. The real issue here is projection, because Newt Gingrich took a whole hell of a lot of money from billionaires. So this is from 8 years ago, but you're going to see this pattern of behavior here with Newt Gingrich. Secrets of the billionaire backing Gingrich's shot at the White House. Sheldon Adelson, big backer of Newt Gingrich. Wall Street Journal did articles about this. Gingrich's secret weapon, Newt Inc., discussing all the money that was backing Newt Gingrich. Forbes, there's a whole list here. 10 billionaires who've backed him. Now, unfortunately, thanks to Forbes' horrible website, here you go. I accidentally zoomed in. You can check out, Adelson, of course, Stanley Hubbard, media tycoon behind DirecTV. Anyways, I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but Peter Thiel, at least 10 different billionaires backing Gingrich for the White House. And if you go to his group, American Solutions Winning the Future, which I don't believe he runs anymore, but this was a group that he had, raised $22 million here in 2008, raised $28 million in 2010. This is what conservatives do all the time. Pure projection. They have tons of billionaires backing them. That's the only reason anyone even still knows who Newt Gingrich, if I can say his name properly. That's why anyone even knows who he is, because of the money that has been backing him his entire career. So of course he assumes, well, if I'm being backed by all this money, well, that must be what is behind what's happening on the left. When of course it's not. Now, let me get to the apology because you got to wonder, what is there to apologize for? He said his piece. There was some silence. Then another host came in and said, don't bring Soros into this. And that was the discussion. Then they ended. It was an awkward moment, but Gingrich wasn't cut off. He was able to say his piece and move on. But no, they have to go on here and apologize to Newt for being incredibly rude.
So we had a little incident on the show yesterday that was not smooth. And while I was leading that segment, we had interruptions, and I sat silently while all of that played out. Also not ideal. Our guest, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, who is beloved and needed to be allowed to speak with the openness and respect that the show is all about, was interrupted. Do we debate with fire here? Yes. But we must also give each other the space to express ourselves. As the only original member of the 6-year-old amazing daytime ride known as Outnumbered, I especially want to rock and roll with every voice and perspective at the table. We don't censor on this show, and that's why we're winning weekdays at noon.
Okay. Now, let me tell you what likely happened. Newt Gingrich was pissed off that there was pushback after his line about Soros and maybe threatened to never come on again unless they apologize to him. So they go on discussing how he is beloved. Oh, Newt Gingrich, so beloved. We love him on this show. So happy to have him on. Nothing bad actually happened. He was able to say his piece. They say we had interruptions. That's Harris Faulkner there making the apology. Harris Faulkner says we had interruptions. There were no interruptions. We can go back and watch the video. Newt Gingrich said his piece. It ended. Someone else talked. That's what happened. That's what happens on a show like this when you have a panel of people. Someone talks, someone else talks. In fact, it was one of the few times where there was not an interruption on a show where you have a panel of people. So this was purely done because Newt Gingrich, what a horrible name, is a very soft man. And I don't just mean physically, soft mentally. He is a soft man who demanded an apology, and that's what apparently happened.